hot air balloons, water balloons, and animal balloons. There are many different types of inflatables, and today we'll be taking a look through the top 15 most amazing balloons. Number 15. The Angry Birds Hot Air Balloon. While Angry Birds may not be as popular as it once was, this Angry Bird hot air balloon will bring you on a trip right down memory lane. First made in 2013 for a hot air balloon festival in Taiwan, this 25-meter high balloon required a grand total of 2.5 kilometers of nylon fabric and 24 kilometers of thread. And once complete, it reportedly had a volume of almost 3,000 cubic meters. And while this balloon has since been recreated several times, we're just happy that it didn't collide into anything and pop in true Angry Birds fashion. Number 14. The world's smallest balloon. While water balloons and balloon animals are all on the smaller side, it's physically impossible to make anything smaller than this balloon. That's because it uses a carbon membrane that is only a single atom thick to create a pressurized balloon that is impermeable to gas. Created at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, it's essentially a tiny inflated sheet of graphene, with this choice of material standing apart since graphene is now recognized as one of the most innovative wonder materials in the mechanical world. Upon inflation, it was found that the material would expand 1 to 100 square micrometers in area and between 250 nanometers to 3 micrometers in depth, making the balloon a true high performer despite its tiny size. Therefore, while these pint-sized balloons may not be all that useful, they just prove how incredible graphene really is. Number 13. The biggest balloon animal. While every child loves to be given a balloon animal when they go to their local circus or carnival, we bet that most would be overjoyed to receive this monstrosity. Built by professional balloon artist Jeremy Telford in 2015, it's essentially a massive wiener dog that's made out of a grand total of 8,867 balloons. Now, it took Telford 4 days to construct the animal, with him doing it entirely by hand and not using any support structure to put it together. The end result of his work was a wiener dog that was about 20 meters long and 11 meters tall, while weighing in at about 82 kilograms. Yeah, we think it's fair to say that there's not much out there that can top this incredible structure. Number 12. Foley balloons. Going through labor is certainly no easy task, but believe it or not, there exists a balloon that can help make it a little easier. Known as a Foley balloon, it's essentially a catheter-like device that can be used to get the cervix to soften and open when labor needs to be induced. It works by first being inserted into the cervix and filled with a saline solution. And this solution allows the catheter to inflate like a balloon, putting pressure on the cervix to help it dilate. As such, the Foley balloon is the tool of choice for those struggling with labor. And while it's not like your everyday balloon, it certainly is very helpful. Number 11. Weight loss balloons. While balloons and weight loss are two words that usually aren't found in the same sentence, it turns out that it's actually entirely possible to buy a balloon that helps you cut down on your calories. Known as an intragastric balloon, using one involves placing a saline-filled silicone balloon in your stomach, and this helps you lose weight by limiting how much you can eat and making you feel fuller faster. As you might imagine, surgically inserting a balloon into your stomach is something that's done as a last resort, and it's only recommended for those who are very heavy and absolutely cannot shed their weight with diet or exercise. Therefore, while these balloons may be cool, we suggest avoiding them if at all possible. Number 10. Hopper balloons. While most hot air balloons use a basket to carry their passengers high up into the sky, hopper balloons work a little bit differently. That's because they use a less restrictive approach that completely removes the basket from the equation. First created in 1923, hopper balloons are essentially hot air balloons that you can strap to your back with a harness. They work very similarly to parachutes in terms of design. However, due to the fact that they're launched from the ground and can remain airborne for between 1 and 1.5 hours, these being fueled by 400 to 990 cubic meters of air that are pumped within them. The two main manufacturers of these incredible balloons are Cameron Balloons and Lindstrand Balloons. And while many cut costs by making them themselves, to buy one new will set you back about 11 grand. Therefore, while these balloons certainly are cool, they aren't exactly one of the most affordable toys out there. Number 9. The first hot air balloon. While hot air balloons have captured the hearts and minds of many for years, the very first one to be set afloat was certainly a little different from the rest. That's because on September 19th of 1783, French brothers Joseph Michel and Jacques-Étienne Montgolfier launched the first hot air balloon in Annonay, France. Unlike most modern balloons, this one was made of cotton and canvas and had paper glued on both sides. And rather than have any human riders, it was decided that animals would hitch a ride on it instead as a precaution. Thus, while King Louis XVI watched on, a sheep, a duck, and cockerel were launched into the air, and after reaching a height of 600 meters, it traveled for about 3.5 kilometers before experiencing a rip in its fabric and landing in the nearby wood of Valcresson. Surprisingly, the sheep, duck, and cockerel came back alive, and as such they were hailed as heroes of the air, and as a reward were given a place in the menagerie in the Versailles by Louis XVI. Thus, while this hot air balloon flight may not have been perfect, it was successful enough to pave the way for a more expanded program in future years.
We're constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button.
Number 8. Space escapes. If you want to go on vacation, you'll likely have to get to your dream destination by plane, but very soon that vacation place could be in outer space. That's because in early 2021, a Florida company known as Exclusive Resorts plans to launch preliminary tests of the spaceship Neptune. This is essentially a massive high-tech hot air balloon that will transport space tourists on commercial flights. And as of now, the plan is for the balloon to measure in at the approximate size of a football stadium. It will carry 8 passengers and a pilot from the Kennedy Space Center to an altitude of about 30.5 kilometers, with this allowing it to reach a point where it is about 99% above the Earth's atmosphere. The entire process of ascending, staying in outer space, and descending is expected to last about 6 hours. And once all of this is done, the spaceship Neptune will land in the sea. And while it still remains to be seen whether or not the hot air balloon spaceship will work, if it does, the first passengers will likely embark sometime in late 2024. Number 7. Sky lanterns. While sky lanterns may not look like much, they are in fact miniature versions of hot air balloons. In essence, these are paper balloons that have a candle at their base, with the heat from that candle essentially heating the air inside of the balloon and allowing it to rise. Now, these were first used in China for military communication purposes thousands of years ago, but over time they became popular with children and were thus incorporated into traditional celebrations such as the Mooncake Festival and the Spring Lantern Festival. Nowadays, these lanterns have found their way into the traditions of people from places as far-flung as Thailand, Portugal, and Mexico. However, it is likely that they will be used less and less often in future years. That's because they're considered to be a fire hazard, and sometimes an errant wind will cause a lantern to catch a blaze and then fall to the ground. This has led to several injuries over the years, with a 10-year-old boy in Germany even dying in 2009 after a sky lantern crashed into his house and burned it down. As a result, these sky lanterns are facing more and more regulations as their dangers become more and more apparent. Number 6. The largest hot air balloon. While hot air balloons may be large, the one that takes the cake for being the biggest of them all is the Cameron Z750. Created by UK-based company Cameron Balloons, this monstrosity has a combined area of 21,152 cubic meters and took a lot of material in order to make. More specifically, the balloon is made out of 2.8 kilometers of Cameron ripstop and hyperlast fabric, 3.1 kilometers of load tape, and 17 kilometers of thread. When fully inflated, the balloon can stretch to a length of up to 40 meters and is strong enough to carry as many as 32 passengers and one pilot. According to Cameron Balloons sales director Nick Purvis, it is the balloon's envelope or main fabric area that's most important. In fact, as stated by Mr. Purvis himself, quote, "All passenger balloons have to work hard. The envelopes need to have a long life and operate for much of that time at higher temperatures. This is why the majority of operators around the world insist on fabrics and balloons exclusively used and manufactured by Cameron Balloons Limited," end quote. Now, while such a statement may seem a little boastful, his company's successful manufacture of the incredible Cameron Z750 certainly makes it seem like this could be true. Interestingly enough, it also seems that Cameron Balloons gets some A-level attention from sponsors, as Groupon went so far as to pay this company to plaster their logo across the high-caliber balloon. Regardless, we think that no matter what you think about hot air balloons, you'd agree that the Cameron Z750 would be a cool vehicle to take a ride in. Number 5. Balloon-Borne Telescopes. The starry night sky has fascinated humans for millennia, and ever since their invention in 1608, telescopes have been the tool of choice to see all of the stars and planets out there. Yet while most modern telescopes are either located on the ground or up in space, balloon-borne telescopes find a happy medium. You see, one of the major problems with using a telescope on Earth is that our atmosphere makes it very hard to see certain celestial objects. This is because the atmosphere blocks out certain wavelengths of light, and this often makes images from telescopes located here on Earth grainy at best. To get past this barrier, many space agencies have brought telescopes up to space, with NASA's Hubble telescope and Russia's Spectre-R being chief among them. However, sending telescopes up to space and then continuously monitoring them is very expensive, so a way to cut the costs while still achieving high-quality images is by using balloon-borne telescopes. Now, generally speaking, a balloon-borne telescope will remain high enough to stay above Earth's stratosphere, but low enough to remain below orbit, with the sweet spot generally being around 40 kilometers in altitude. The telescope will get to this height with the help of large stratospheric balloons, with these being necessary as they're both strong enough to reach this height without popping, while also carrying the weight of the telescope, which is at times as much as 3,000 kilograms. Once launched, these telescopes can last for upwards of 50 days, with experts in the field such as Dr. Barth Netterfield even used one of these telescopes to conduct experiments that try to determine what the universe is made of. Interestingly enough, the findings from this particular experiment were so groundbreaking that they landed him on the front page of the New York Times, and thus, while these telescopes may not be the best of the best, their balloons make them extremely useful to the scientific community. Number 4. Balloon across the world. While many people have circumnavigated the globe in boats, cars, bikes, and planes, 65-year-old Russian adventurer Fedor Konyukov made headlines when he first managed to do so in a hot air balloon. Now, in all fairness, he was not the first person to do so. After all, Australian Steve Fawcett was the first to do so back in 2002. However, he took a grand total of 15 days, and thus Fedor Konyukov knew that he could do better. Now, keep in mind that Mr. Konyukov wasn't exactly a novice. After all, he's climbed most of the world's highest mountains, has sailed around the world 4 times, has crossed the Pacific Ocean in a rowboat, and has trekked to both the North and South Poles. Thus, if there was somebody to beat Steve Fawcett's record, it was Fedor. So, in order to complete his journey, he acquired a Rosière, which is a hybrid balloon that contains separate chambers for helium and heated air. The main advantages of these chambers is that they allow for greater control of the balloon's buoyancy, while also using less fuel than traditional hot air balloons. In order to make this world-class balloon, Fedor employed UK-based company Cameron Balloons Limited, largely considered to be one of the most advanced Rosières ever created. It was 60 meters tall, boasted a volume of 15,000 cubic meters, and weighed in at a total of 9 tons. In order to transport Fedor, it had a 2x2 meter carbon fiber gondola, which could double as a lifeboat in case of emergency. Perhaps most importantly of all, it also had an exit latch on its exterior, so that Fedor could make quick fixes in case anything malfunctioned. Yet despite this balloon being top of the line, Fedor had to endure extreme conditions during this endeavor. After all, he had to go through multiple thunderstorms, face Arctic winds and temperatures of negative 30 degrees Celsius, and sleep just 2 to 4 hours per night in order to ensure that the balloon remained intact. However, although his journey was harrowing, after 11 days he reached the location he started from, thus officially breaking the previous world record by about 4 days. On our end, we'd say that such a feat is nothing short of impressive. Number 3. Project Loon's balloons. Poor Wi-Fi connectivity is a major issue for people in developing countries, and in 2011 Google launched a program that was meant to try to solve this massive problem. Known as Project Loon, the idea behind it was to both increase Wi-Fi connectivity in rural and remote areas and have a method of quickly bringing Wi-Fi to destroyed areas after natural disasters such as earthquakes and hurricanes, with high-altitude balloons being the proposed method in achieving this. More specifically, the plan was to launch a network of balloons at altitudes of between 18 to 25 kilometers, and they would then create a Wi-Fi network with speeds of up to 1 megabit. This was possible because each balloon featured directional antennas that could transmit the signals to ground stations, and they could hypothetically be launched quite inexpensively and service a vast array of people. After all, each balloon could provide 4G LTE coverage over 11,000 square kilometers, with this being an area that would otherwise require 200 cell towers to cover. And interestingly enough, Project Loon would only need 1 or 2 on-the-ground internet hubs to power enough balloons to cover an entire country. They also had some serious demand for the balloons, as they were not only developed in several different countries, but were able to quickly and effectively respond to natural disasters in countries such as Puerto Rico and Peru. However, despite all of this, Loon shut down its operations on January 21st of 2021. Why is this? Well, after some further research, it appears that the shutdown can be pegged to 2 main factors. The first is that although Loon was able to keep the balloons from moving around very much, they weren't always all that easy to control in the wake of poor weather conditions, as a total of 18 crashed between 2015 and 2021. This was problematic because it not only brought down the internet connection in these areas, but would also mean that Loon would have to spend a substantial amount of money to resolve the problem and create a whole new balloon. However, the second and most critical reason was because the project proved to cost more than anticipated, while having lower returns than expected, with Loon CEO Alastair Westgarth announcing that Loon wasn't able to find a way to, quote, get the costs low enough to build a long-term sustainable business, end quote. Therefore, while this balloon-based project was ambitious, it unfortunately did not end up succeeding. Number 2. Fuggo balloons. The Second World War was a time of hardship for the American public, although for the most part they were not directly implicated in the fighting. After all, unless you were a soldier, chances are that you were on U.S. soil, and by extension, relatively safe from any Japanese, German, or Italian bombs. However, one exception to this relative safety was the threat of Fuggo balloons. Initially launched by Japan in late 1944, these were essentially large balloon-bound fire bombs that were designed to enter the United States with the help of wind currents in order to devastate the American home front. Generally speaking, Fuggo balloons consisted of a hydrogen balloon attached to a dangerous payload, with these including everything from 33-pound anti-personnel bombs to 37-pound incendiary bombs. These were designed as an inexpensive way to make use of the jet stream over the Pacific Ocean to drop bombs on American cities, forests, and farmlands. And interestingly enough, it was the first ever weapon to possess intercontinental range, and at the time these balloon bombardments were considered to be the longest range attacks ever conducted in the history of warfare. However, while these may seem pretty insane, they actually were not all that effective. That's because they had to contend with extreme weather conditions, and oftentimes they would either be destroyed over the Pacific Ocean or not end up exploding on impact. As such, there were only 7 reported deaths from these balloons, with 6 of them being the result of a child kicking one while on a Sunday school outing, while the other was linked to a firefighter who died fighting a forest fire that was caused by a balloon. Therefore, while these deaths were tragic, they weren't enough to justify the considerable cost of the program, and so in April of 1945, Fuggo balloons stopped being launched due to the Japanese considering them to be a complete failure. Number 1. Surveillance balloons. While it is well known that the state monitors the activities of its people closely through the help of security cameras in places such as China and Russia, in 2019 the United States launched a surveillance program that rivaled even these. That's because according to documents filed by the Federal Communications Commission, the United States released up to 25 unmanned solar-powered balloons across the states of South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Missouri, before concluding in central Illinois, with their total flight path being about 400 kilometers. This experimental test was meant to detect the possible trafficking of narcotics and terrorist threats, as the balloon's 19-kilometer altitude allowed them to act as persistent surveillance without being obvious to those on the ground. In order to do their job effectively, they were all equipped with high-tech radars designed to simultaneously track several individual vehicles day or night through any kind of weather, and they could either ascend or descend to make the best use of wind patterns. According to Arthur Holland Michael, who is the co-director of the Center for the Study of the Drone at Bard College in New York, quote, "What this new technology proposes is to watch everything at once. Sometimes it's referred to as combat TiVo, because when an event happens somewhere in the surveilled area, you can potentially rewind the tape to see exactly what occurred, and rewind further to see who's involved and where they came from," end quote. However, while this is certainly a benefit, these balloons have also been criticized by many others, with Jay Stanley, who's a senior policy analyst at the American Civil Liberties Union, noting that, quote, "We do not think American cities should be subject to wide area surveillance in which every vehicle could be tracked wherever they go," end quote. Regardless, while these balloons may very well pose a threat to the privacy of millions of Americans, they are certainly a cool piece of technology.
Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.